Today I will be talking about Lanfrica, a project that connects all African language resources. I will talk about the motivation behind Lanfrica, which will talk about the problems facing African language resources. I will talk about how Lanfrica works, and I will talk about other initiatives around building NLP for African languages. When we come to NLP for African languages, there are quite some problems facing this field. The first thing we see is that in a world where Africa and African languages are 30% of the world languages, we only see very few research being done on them. So for example, the plot here on the right, it shows over the years research being done on two languages. One is language X in blue and one is language Y in orange. And this is in prestigious conferences and this is in workshops. And what we see here is over the years, language X in blue research keeps increasing. The number of papers keeps increasing for both places. But language Y in orange, it's really low. And it's even very, very low. So there's a great divide between languages that are studied in NLP. We see English and European languages being studied more and more. This is language in blue. Whereas African languages, although making up 30% of the world languages, are heavily understudied. And language Y is Somali, an African language. In the same way, when we come to language technologies like Alexa, Google Home, or even translation engines, we see that many African languages are highly underrepresented here. So, for example, Google Translate, it has more than 13 now. This was in 2019, and Yandex has one, and we see very few. And although more languages are being added, the idea is that when you look at Africa representing 30% of languages and the number that are being integrated in language technologies, there's a very huge divide. Another problem facing NLP for African languages can be described here. So, what this goes to show is like the pipeline when you're doing NLP for a language. So, for NLP for a particular language to be successful, you need content creators. These are people who create content in that language. So, for example, we have Wikipedia, which has created where lots of content are on English language and other languages. You need annotators, and for annotators, you need tools like dictionaries, keyboard, and then you need curators, crawlers that will curate the data. So, this is the whole part of having data set in that language. So, data set creation. We need language technologists who can work with that data. So, and they need AI toolkits and preprocessors specific for that language. And then they can build their toolkits or the models, and then you need evaluators. This also needs metrics that can evaluate on that language better. And then you need the human evaluators. And what we see is that for English and other European languages or high resource languages, you have many of these agents, they are available. Many of these tools are also available. But when we come to African languages, then it's a different story. Many of these tools are not available. Many of these connections or these agents are also not available. So this is another issue facing African NLP for African languages. The second issue, which builds on the first. So the good news is that we have people, organizations, communities, researchers actively working in this field. So they're working to create tools like dictionaries and keyboards. They're working to create models on machine translation for different African languages. Bear in mind, we have 2,000 plus African languages. So there's so much research and efforts, but the problem is that they are scattered. So we have no way of keeping track of them. And this is the second problem facing NLP for African languages. A concrete case study, take me. I am a student and I want to work on building an NLP model for an African language. And I want to know if there are existing data sets for that language or existing models or papers that I can use. Where do I go to? In the same way, take a general user, someone who's just interested in the language, maybe new stuff in media and news for an African language. Where do you go to? The same problem with a linguist and the government officials. The problem of where do we go to is not solved. And this is what Lanfrica is trying to solve. In Lanfrica, we're trying to create a central hub to catalog and link all African language resources. This is what Lanfrica is trying to do, trying to connect all these efforts and link them, making them easily discoverable. Because if we have a place where we can easily find past resources and efforts on an African language, then it's easy for us to know what has been done and how to build up on it. In other words, creating, um, improving the state of research in that language. We can also know which African languages don't have enough attention on them, and we can put more effort on those languages. Here we see some of the differences between Lanfrica and other major sites. So this basically goes to show the unique value of Lanfrica. So some of the uniqueness of Lanfrica is it gives the ability to find language resources for specific African languages. So it's tailored, it's language specific, or language focused. For example, if you go to Google search and you search for machine translation data sets for Afar, because Afar as a language doesn't have much representation on the internet, it's very unlikely that Google has crawled links connecting it. It's very likely that someone who did some little research on machine translation for Afar and has the information on GitHub, it's very likely that Google will not be able to get to that place because these languages don't have much attention on the web. But on Lanfrica, you can now easily find these resources. Other ones include access to centralized data set, ability to find other language resources besides paper. So we offer software, data sets, and the rest. And now back to this case study of me, a researcher who wants to build an NLP model. This is what happens when there is Landfreaker. So to be specific, I'm a researcher. I want to build a machine translation model for Afrikaans, and I want to know existing data sets. Where do you go to? Where do I go to? And now the answer is I go to Lanfrica. So I go to www.lanfrica.com. And so here I am at www.lanfrica.com. I scroll down. I go to, we have a Slack, so you can join our Slack. And I go to Browse Records. I click on it. And I have a place where there are resources. So resources, I will explain what the resources mean, but these are all the resources we have and a very easy way to filter them. So for the Afrikaans, I click Afrikaans, it's filters. I'm looking for machine translation, so I click machine translation. I'm looking for dataset, so I scroll down and I click datasets. And voila, I have information of all the linked datasets for machine translation that contain Afrikaans. And I can easily work from here by clicking on any of them and going on to what I want to. Now that I've shown you what I'm going through Lanfrica looks like, let's look at some of the properties of it. So Lanfrica currently we have 699 plus resources that have been linked, and we cover 2,189 African languages and more of them. So we also cover the extinct languages, the extinct African languages, and the full list can be found on Lanfrica. We our filter record section. Let me here. We It makes it very easy to filter the records to what you want. So you can filter by languages just by clicking on the language, or on the task just by clicking on the task, and by the record types. We also have we're very flexible with the resources that we link. So the resources can be found in these record types. We link papers, research papers, data sets. We link projects. So it's like GitHub projects or other forms of projects, models, software, media, language assessment. And flexibility means that if in the future there's like a new category of resources, we can easily include it and start linking it. We also make use of tags. So tags allow makes it very easy to identify specific resources. For example, we use tags to link and identify resources from specific organizations. So for example, we have the Africa Archive tag here, which has 239 records. And when you click on it, it filters the records we have and shows you all the records from Africa Archive. We have the ACL tag here, which can easily show you research papers from ACL for any African language that you want. So the possibilities are endless. Recently, we also included the tag for dictionary and keyboard, which allows you to find African language dictionaries in the keyboard easily. And here is looking at one specific resource. So when you click on the resource here, what it shows you is just the title of the resource, a short description of the resource, and then we have a link that takes you back to the original house of the resource. So that's why we use the word linking, because we do not necessarily need to host the resource, but wherever the resource is hosted, we link it, thereby connecting it with the other resources around the world, making it more discoverable, and also making you, the resource holder, making your resource more discoverable. We also provide information about the languages covered and the tasks covered for that resource. Because Lanfrica is a community effort, we have ways that the community can contribute. So these records are added by the community, so you can add your own record, your own resource by clicking this button. So you go to, sorry, you go to contribute here on the website, and then you come here. So you can click this button and you can add your record. Your record doesn't have to be published. It can be an unpublished project. It could be an unpublished data set, as long as it features one or more African languages. Also, we try to meet up, link with, or partner with conference organizers and workshop organizers so that we could, especially conferences and workshops that are specific to African languages, we partner with them and try to link all the resources got from this event. The next important thing I would like to talk about is Lanfrica Talks. This is another way that Lanfrica is trying to improve the state of NLP in African languages. In other words, trying to build NLP for African languages. Lanfrica Talks, the website is lanfrica.com/blog/Lanfrica Talks. What is Lanfrica Talks? Or why are we doing Lanfrica Talks? The impact of natural language processing in the world is moving really fast, and in the world we tend to be attracted by only the bigger trends. So for example, we have Meta or Google or OpenAI releasing very large, or Hugging Face, the big science, releasing very large language models, which are good because they perform very well on NLP tasks. That's good. Or we have research papers from prestigious conferences. But the problem is that smaller efforts, smaller but impactful efforts, do not get much attention because the world only looks for bigger and bigger things like larger trends. And so these smaller efforts do not get much attention. And so Lanfrica Talks is trying to mitigate that by providing a platform for anyone to share and showcase their efforts, no matter how small it is. So the primary aim of Lanfrica Talks is to create an online library of knowledge around African language technologies. We imagine a future where you can go to YouTube and you can like see so many videos about projects and ideas and people all about African languages. And so we do this by organizing bi-weekly talks where we invite speakers to come and give a talk about interesting research or projects that they are working on. Also, speakers can request to give a talk, so everything is on the website. Furthermore, all the talks are recorded, so if you miss, you're not able to join the talk or you're busy, you can always come on the YouTube playlist and watch the records. Thank you very much.